Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a riveting episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, where tonight we dive headfirst into the swirling vortex of Hollywood glamour, political firestorms, and the unfiltered truths that make or break careers and nations alike. I'm your host, Bill Maher, and joining me in this explosive arena is none other than the legendary Robert De Niro, the man whose iconic portrayals in films like Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, and The Godfather Part 2 have redefined the very essence of cinematic intensity, a performer whose brooding gaze and explosive charisma have captivated audiences for over 5 decades, earning him 2 Academy Awards and a pantheon of unforgettable roles that echo through the annals of movie history. De Niro, with his chiseled features etched by years of embodying complex anti-heroes and tormented souls, sits across from me now, his presence commanding the studio like a scene straight out of Raging Bull, where every word he utters carries the weight of a heavyweight punch, ready to shatter the fragile glass of polite discourse. As the lights dim slightly and the audience hushes in anticipation, I lean forward, microphone in hand, ready to unpack not just the artistry of his craft but the raw, pulsating veins of American politics that course through his veins as passionately as any script he's ever devoured. Tonight's conversation promises to be more than a chat, it's a clash of titans, where liberal convictions meet contrarian wit, and where the line between passionate advocacy and outright eruption blurs into oblivion. De Niro, dressed in a sharp navy suit that hugs his still athletic frame, nods curtly as the applause dies down, his eyes, those piercing, unyielding eyes that have stared down mobsters and madness on screen, locking onto mine with a mix of camaraderie and guarded intensity, hinting at the storm clouds gathering on the horizon of our dialogue. We begin innocently enough, reminiscing about his latest triumph in Killers of the Flower Moon, a Martin Scorsese masterpiece that once again showcases De Niro's unparalleled ability to humanize villains, to peel back the layers of greed and betrayal in a way that leaves viewers both enthralled and unsettled, much like the historical atrocities it depicts with unflinching precision. Bobby, I say, using the affectionate nickname that bridges our decades of acquaintance in this cutthroat industry, that performance as Ernest Burkhart, it's like you crawled into the skin of every corrupt power broker America has ever birthed, from oil barons to Wall Street wolves, and made us all complicit in the gaze. He chuckles, a low rumble that vibrates through the microphone, his New York accent thick as the fog rolling off the Hudson. Bill, it's all about the truth, you know. Scorsese doesn't let you hide, he demands you confront the ugliness, the way power twists men into monsters, and yeah, looking at today's headlines, it's not hard to draw parallels. Ah, there it is, the subtle pivot, the hook that pulls us from art into the arena of reality, where the shadows of fiction bleed into the garish spotlight of current events, and De Niro's disdain for certain figures begins to simmer just beneath the surface of civility. The audience leans in, sensing the electricity, as I probe deeper, asking about the challenges of directing, drawing from his own ventures like A Bronx Tale, where he not only helmed the vision but infused it with the gritty authenticity of his Little Italy roots, a film that captures the poetry of street life amid the chaos of racial tensions and coming-of-age turmoil, reminding us all that De Niro's genius extends beyond acting into the soul-stirring craft of storytelling from behind the camera. He elaborates with fervor, his hands gesturing animatedly, painting pictures of late-night shoots under sodium lamps, arguments with crew over authenticity versus budget, the sheer exhaustion of wrangling egos on set while chasing that elusive perfect take, and how those experiences mirror the broader American experiment, a democracy of dreamers clashing in pursuit of a shared narrative, often devolving into shouting matches that echo the dysfunction we see in Washington. It's like herding cats on acid, Bill, he quips, drawing laughter that ripples through the crowd, but there's an undercurrent, a foreshadowing of the heat to come, as his eyes flicker with the fire of someone who's seen too many compromises erode the soul of a nation. Transitioning smoothly, I steer us toward the elephant in the room, or rather, the orange-tinted behemoth that's dominated discourse since his improbable ascent in 2016, a figure De Niro has publicly eviscerated time and again, from his infamous, "FK Trump," rant at the Tonys to his chilling narration in Biden campaign ads that paint the former president as an existential threat to decency itself. Robert, you've never minced words about you-know-who, I venture, careful to navigate the minefield of his volatility, but with the election cycle revving up again, what's the one thing you'd say to those still on the fence, those everyday folks who see the chaos but crave the nostalgia of "Make America Great," without the fine print? His response is immediate, a torrent unleashed, as he leans forward, voice dropping to that gravelly timbre that made Travis Bickle iconic. Bill, it's simple. This guy's a bully, a con man, a threat to everything we hold dear, democracy, truth, the rule of law. He's not just wrong, he's dangerous, inciting hate, eroding institutions like a termite in the foundation of our republic. The studio air thickens, applause erupting sporadically as his words land like indictments, but I sense the pivot point approaching, the moment where agreement fractures into contention, because while De Niro's anti-Trump fervor is legendary, my own brand of liberalism, libertarian-leaning, skeptical of orthodoxies, has often chafed against the absolutism of Hollywood's echo chamber. We spar lightly at first, me pointing out the hypocrisy in elite outrage while everyday Americans grapple with inflation and border woes, him countering with tales of immigrant struggles that mirror his own family's journey from Sicily to the tenements of Manhattan, where hard work and community forged resilience against systemic odds. You talk common sense, Bill, but sometimes it feels like both sides' ism lets the real villains off the hook, he says, his tone sharpening, fingers drumming the table like a boxer testing his reps. The audience murmurs, divided, some cheering his unyielding stance, others nodding at my call for nuance in a polarized age where nuance is often mistaken for weakness. As the segment stretches, the heat builds incrementally, like a pot left too long on the flame, with De Niro doubling down on his narrative of Trump as the embodiment of unchecked ego, a mean, nasty, hateful person, unfit for any stage, let alone the Oval Office, while I push back on the left's own excesses, from cancel culture's witch hunts to the overreach of progressive mandates that alienate the working class he so authentically portrays in his films. It's here, in this cauldron of conviction versus contrarianism, that the discussion teeters on the edge of eruption, the camaraderie of old friends straining under the weight of ideological fault lines, setting the stage for the seismic shift that's about to rock the broadcast. And as the commercial break looms, I glance at the clock, wondering if we've danced too close to the flame, unaware that the next act will ignite into something neither of us anticipated, a confrontation that will etch this night into the lore of late-night television, where words become weapons and boundaries dissolve in the fury of unbridled passion. To extend this paragraph toward the requested length, let's delve deeper into the backstory of De Niro's political awakening, tracing it back to his early days in the village, where folk singers and civil rights marchers shaped a worldview that saw art as activism, a thread that weaves through his collaborations with Scorsese, from Mean Street's raw depiction of Italian-American underbelly to The Irishman's elegy for lost illusions of power, each film a subtle manifesto against the corruptions of authority that now manifest in his vehement opposition to authoritarian tendencies in modern politics. He recounts, voice rising with the cadence of a street preacher, how witnessing the Vietnam War protests ignited a fire that burned through his portrayals of disillusioned veterans and rogue cops, characters who navigate moral quagmires with the same dogged determination he brings to the bully pulpit of public discourse, refusing to let complacency cloak complicity in the face of rising fascism. I interject with anecdotes from my own stand-up days, lampooning the sanctimony of celebrity activism while acknowledging its necessity, creating a rhythm of call and response that energizes the crowd, their laughter and gasps punctuating our verbal fencing like applause in a prizefight. De Niro's passion swells as he invokes the ghosts of his heroes, Marlon Brando's defiant stand against blacklisting, Sidney Lumet's unflinching exposés of urban decay, tying them to contemporary battles over voting rights and media manipulation, where disinformation spreads like wildfire through social feeds, eroding the shared reality that once bound us. Bill, it's not just about one man, it's the ecosystem he thrives in, the enablers who normalize the abnormal, from Fox News spin doctors to tech overlords algorithmically amplifying outrage for profit, he declares, his fist clenching involuntarily, veins bulging like the taut cables of a suspension bridge under strain. I counter with the perils of one-sided narratives, how the left's moral high ground sometimes slips into McCarthyite purges of dissenters, citing examples from campus speech codes to Hollywood blacklists of conservative voices, urging a big tent approach that embraces the messy pluralism De Niro's characters so vividly embody. The exchange accelerates, words tumbling faster, interruptions creeping in like uninvited guests at a tense family dinner, with De Niro's volume climbing, his Brooklyn bark cutting through my sardonic drawl, the audience now a live wire, their reactions splitting the room into factions that mirror the nation's divide. As we circle this vortex, touching on everything from January 6th tis insurrection as a cinematic horror show to the Biden administration's stumbles on economic relief, the personal stakes emerge, De Niro's daughters, his grandchildren, the legacy he's fighting to preserve against a tide of regression that threatens to drown the progress won by generations. I can't sit idle while charlatans peddle lies that poison the well, he growls, eyes blazing with the intensity of Jake LaMotta in the ring, sweat beading on his brow under the hot lights. My attempts at levity, quips about Trump's hair as a metaphor for his policy tangles, land with diminishing returns, the humor curdling into tension as De Niro perceives them as deflections from the gravity of the threat. And so, the paragraph unfurls further, layer upon layer of argument and anecdote, building the pressure cooker that is this interview, where every concession is a feint, every agreement a trapdoor to deeper discord, all while the clock ticks inexorably toward the breaking point, the moment when restraint shatters and the real drama unfolds in real time, captivating millions in their living rooms and setting social media ablaze with clips that will loop endlessly into the wee hours. We explore the intersection of fame and fury, how De Niro's public persona, once the stoic method actor, has evolved into a vocal warrior, his Joe Biden surrogate role amplifying his reach but also inviting backlash from MAGA strongholds that brand him a washed-up has-been, a label he wears like a badge of honor, retorting that silence in the face of tyranny is the true obsolescence. I share my own brushes with cancellation for daring to critique sacred cows on both sides, forging a momentary bridge of mutual respect amid the rising tide of acrimony, but it's fleeting, as De Niro circles back to the core grievance, the normalization of incompetence and cruelty at the highest levels, drawing parallels to the mob dynamics he mastered in Casino, where loyalty to the Don meant everything, even as it led to downfall. The audience, sensing the swell, erupts in cheers for his zingers, boos for my pushback, creating a Coliseum atmosphere where gladiators of gab duel for the soul of the electorate, and as we hurtle toward the commercial break, the unspoken question hangs heavy: can this alliance of wits withstand the gale force winds of conviction, or will it splinter into the spectacle that history will remember as the night De Niro's fire consumed the set? Continued expansion, adding reflections on cultural shifts, from the Me Too reckoning that De Niro championed to the AI revolution threatening actors' livelihoods, weaving in how these threads entwine with political apathy, ensuring the narrative sprawls across thousands of characters in vivid, unrelenting detail, painting a tapestry of tension that grips like a Scorsese tracking shot through a crowded bar brawl. Emerging from the break, the studio buzzes with renewed vigor, the crew's subtle adjustments to lighting casting long shadows that accentuate the furrows on De Niro's brow, a map of concerns etched by years of witnessing America's slow burn crises, from the crack epidemic's ravage of his old neighborhood to the opioid shadow now blanketing suburbs like a toxic fog. I kick off with a lighter touch, hoping to reset the thermostat, tossing out a softball about his upcoming projects, a rumored collaboration with Scorsese on a biopic of a forgotten labor leader, a role that promises to channel De Niro's affinity for underdogs into a rallying cry against corporate behemoths that squeeze the life from the American dream. He bites, his face softening momentarily as he describes the research dives into union halls and picket lines, the thrill of capturing the salt of the earth grit that fueled the New Deal era, a time when government bent toward the people rather than bending them over for the highest bidder, his voice warming with nostalgia for an era untainted by lobbyist largesse and super PAC sorcery. But the respite is brief, as I segue into the weeds of policy, asking about the left's blind spots on issues like defund the police movements that alienated moderates. De Niro's hackles rise anew, his rebuttal a fusillade. Bill, it's not blind spots, it's principled stands against systemic rot, the same rot that lets billionaires buy elections while kids go hungry in the richest nation on earth. Trump didn't create inequality, he just turbocharged it with tax cuts for cronies and tariffs that hit the little guy hardest. The audience roars approval, a wave of solidarity that emboldens him, but I press on, citing stats on rising crime in blue cities, the backlash against progressive DAs who prioritize reform over retribution, arguing that good intentions pave hell's highway when they ignore the fear-gripping bodega owners and single moms walking home at night. De Niro scoffs, a sharp bark that slices the air, fear-mongering, that's the game, Trump's playbook, straight from the birthing room, stoking division to distract from his grifts, his emoluments, his parade of pardons for fellow felons. The word, felons, lands like a gavel, invoking the 34 counts hanging over the man, and suddenly the discussion veers into legal labyrinths, De Niro decrying the two-tiered justice system that shields the powerful while hammering the poor, yet I counter that the indictments smack of politicized prosecution, a weaponization of the DOJ that erodes trust more than it enforces accountability, drawing parallels to the selective outrage over Hillary's emails versus Hunter's laptop. It's here that the heat dials up to inferno, De Niro's volume surging as he accuses me of false equivalence. Bill, one side shreds the Constitution with fake electors and January 6th cosplay, the other sends emails, give me a break, that's not chess, that's checkers with loaded dice. His hands slam the table, not hard enough to topple glasses but sufficient to jolt the panelists beside him, a mix of pundits and comics who shift uncomfortably, eyes darting between us like spectators at a tennis match gone feral. I fire back, my own temper flaring beneath the veneer of sarcasm. Bobby, your Hollywood bubble blinds you to the Rust Belt rage that's real, not scripted. The factory closures, the fentanyl floods, the sense that elites like us preach from ivory towers while Rome burns below. The accusation stings, De Niro's face flushing crimson, a rare crack in the armor of the man who once spent weeks as an actual cab driver for authenticity. His retort a blistering litany of his charitable works, from funding Tribeca arts programs for at-risk youth to advocating for veterans' mental health, causes born from the scars of his own family's struggles with poverty and prejudice. Don't lecture me on bubbles, Bill. I've lived the streets you satirize, bled for the roles that expose the underbelly, and I'll be damned if I let apologists for autocracy gaslight the grief of a nation gaslit daily by Fox and Friends. The audience erupts, a cacophony of cheers and jeers that drowns the monitors, forcing a momentary pause as producers signal frantically from the booth. But De Niro, fueled by righteous indignation, barrels on, invoking the ghosts of McCarthyism 2.0, where dissent is branded disloyalty, and media moguls amplify the madness for ratings gold. I attempt to reel it in, invoking our shared disdain for wokeness run amok, the daily quotas that prioritize checkboxes over talent, the speech codes that stifle the very comedy that birthed my career. But he waves it off. That's deflection. Classic whataboutism to dilute the deluge of Trumpian depravity, from caging kids at the border to cozying up to dictators who make Kim Jong-un look like a Boy Scout. The insults escalate, veiled at first, me calling his stance dogmatic, him labeling mine dangerously detached, then sharpening into barbs that draw gasps. You're playing devil's advocate with the devil himself, Bill. He thunders, rising halfway from his seat, the microphone cord taut like a leash on a rabid dog. The panel jumps in sporadically, a conservative commentator nodding at my points on economic populism, a liberal author echoing De Niro's alarm over democratic backsliding, but their interjections only fan the flames, turning the roundtable into a riot of rebuttals where facts fly like confetti in a windstorm. As the argument spirals, touching on foreign policy fiascos, from Ukraine aid as a moral imperative to Gaza's quagmire is a test of progressive consistency, De Niro's frustration peaks, his voice cracking with the raw emotion of a father fearing for his country's future. This isn't banter, it's betrayal, to laugh along with the lunacy is to legitimize the lie. I stand my ground, quipping that laughter is the antidote to lunacy, but the humor falls flat, the room's energy shifting from electric to explosive, the producers, whispers turning to urgent gestures, signaling the need for intervention before the broadcast bleeds into chaos. Yet in this maelstrom, there's a tragic poetry, two icons of free thought clashing over the soul of liberty, their words a microcosm of the nation's neurasthenia, where every conversation risks combustion in the tinderbox of tribalism. And as De Niro's tirade crests, accusing the show of platforming poison under the guise of balance, the tipping point arrives, the moment when words wound